Welcome back, Trailblazers. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to take a moment to talk about a tool that has completely transformed the way I plan and navigate my hikes, AllTrails Plus. As a Trailheads ambassador and the organizer of the Yakima Valley Trekkers, I'm out on the trails a lot. One of my favorite features of AllTrails Plus is the ability to edit and create my own maps. Conditions change, fallen trees, washed out sections, or even a last-minute reroute. And with AllTrails Plus, I can adjust my route on the fly and share it with others so everyone stays informed and safe. AllTrails Plus also gives you offline maps, wrong turn alerts, and 3D trail previews to help you stay on track and make the most of your adventure. And the best part, you can get 30% off an AllTrails Plus membership with my exclusive link in the episode show notes. So whether you're planning your next big trek or just looking for a new trail to explore, AllTrails Plus has you covered. Check it out and let's hit the trail. Welcome to Season 15 of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I'm your host, Ivan, and each week we're hitting the trail through conversations with extraordinary hikers from across the United States and beyond. Summer is the season the high country has been holding its breath for. The pass is finally clear, the snowfields shrink back to the shadows, and suddenly the whole map opens up. Ridgelines we could only dream about in February are right there waiting. There's a particular kind of ambition that lives in these long days. The 4 a.m. alpine start, the meadows exploding with lupin and paintbrush, the cold shock of a glacier-fed lake at the end of a dusty climb. The light stretches on forever, and so does the sense that anything is possible up there. This season, I've had the privilege of sitting down with hikers who chase those big summer objectives, the long miles, the high summits, the trips that test what you're made of, and reward you with the kind of views you carry on for the rest of your life. Their stories are about going farther, reaching higher, and finding out who you become somewhere above the tree line. So fill the water bottles, check the forecast one more time, and get ready. Season 15 is here, and the conversations ahead are as wide open, sun-drenched, and full of possibility as a long summer day in the high country. 4 years ago today, Hikes and Mikes started with a folding table, a mic, and total strangers at trailheads. Now closing in on 200 episodes, the tables get turned, literally. For this anniversary special, my longtime guest and friend, Tami, otherwise known as Tami on the Trail on Instagram, takes over as host, interviewing me lakeside on the third night of our 4-day trek on British Columbia's Berg Lake Trail. I get into why I started this podcast in the first place, from missing the outdoors during a stint in Phoenix, to recording strangers at trailheads before going virtual. Then it's my closest call yet, turning back a Mount Adams summit attempt in deteriorating snow, including a scary moment post-holing through the snowpack on the descent, and the months-long chase of canceled permits that finally landed back-to-back nights at Whitehorn, Berg Lake, and Kinney Lake. Plus Union Creek Falls, the short waterfall hike that actually got me hooked on hiking, my slow shift to an ultralight setup, why Hawaiian shirts are now trail staples, and my now infamous Berg Lake Ramen Bomb backpacking meal. Tami and I also run a round of Season 15 This or That questions, with a few more to come, plus a bonus mailbag segment answering listener-submitted community questions. 4 years, one flipped mic, and a whole lot of trail talk. Without further ado, let's jump into this episode featuring me as the guest and special host, Tami.
Hi, Hikes and Mikes podcast listeners. Today is Tami's takeover of Ivan's podcast. We are sitting at the beautiful Kinney Lake in British Columbia. Ivan invited me on a backpacking trip, and I said yes before I even knew what I was doing, because if Ivan invites you on a backpacking trip, you say yes, always. We're going to start this podcast off with some questions that I thought maybe listeners would be interested in. So I'm starting this off with, Ivan, what is your purpose for doing this podcast? What is your why?
I think for me was I lived in Hawaii for almost a decade, and a lot of my joy came from being outside and the outdoors. And then right before COVID happened, I moved to Phoenix, and tagging COVID plus Phoenix summers really made me miss the outdoors. So when I moved back to Washington at the beginning of 2023, I really wanted to get back outside, and I would do a lot of solo hikes. And all those solo hikes, and which I think a lot of people will understand this, you meet just random strangers at a trailhead or at a summit. You have a brief conversation. Sometimes they can leave lasting impressions, and I wanted to capture those moments. So originally I thought, well, maybe I'll record it and turn it into a blog and just kind of use what we discussed as a transcription. But then I was like, well, if we're going to record it, might as well publish the audio. So that's how it happened. And originally the podcast was me going to Trailhead, setting up an actual recording studio with chairs, a table, and microphones, and recording with random strangers. So I think like the first 3 or 4 episodes were like that. And then once we had like an early snow dump, I think in October, I was like, there's no way I'm going to keep somebody off trail, not moving in snow. So I was going to pause it and then move to re-record in spring. But then I was like, well, let me see if I could do it virtually. And I actually reached out to Grant, gallivanting with Grant first, and he said yes. And so I recorded with him first virtually, and then another person, which we both hiked with, Sarah Yu. She was the first episode of the virtual Hikes and Mics experience. And I really just enjoyed hearing other people's stories about how much they love the outdoors. And that kind of just spiraled into what Hikes and Mics is now, because a lot of those people were huge impacts on my own personal hiking experience. And I think I do get takeaways from each guest that I interview in my own outdoor journey. And I think that's what keeps driving me, because you can backpack, you can hike, but unless you have different experiences or hear other people's experiences, you might be missing something. And I think for me, hearing other people's experiences has helped me tremendously improve my ability to enjoy the outdoors. And I'm hoping that by people listening to the podcast and the guests, that it's having the same impact on the listeners.
Wow. That was not what I was expecting your answer to be, but it was really good. I can see why you do it. If you could have a favorite trail that you've done, what trail would you say that would be?
That's tough. So the one that got me into hiking is a short trail. It's like 1.5 in, 1.5 out. It's called Union Creek Falls. I think I've shared this on other podcasts before, but my first like legit hiking experience was my buddies took me on what was called Clemens Mountain, or Mount Clemens, which is our local mountain. And it's 3,000 feet of gain in like 2.5 miles with at least 5 false summits. So every time I thought we were there, there was another one, and it was just demoralizing. And I was like, if this is hiking, I don't want any part of it. So I didn't hike for like 5 years. And then in my mid-20s, I was like, let me get back to it again. And luckily I had a friend in the Forest Service, and he would be like, you should go check out this hike. You should go check out that hike. And finally he's like, you would love Union Creek Falls. Super easy. And the falls is spectacular. For folks that have never visited, it's a 40-foot drop, just massive waterfall. You only got to go 1.5 miles in, and it's just tremendous. So that one I go at least 2 to 3 times a year just to see it. But like, as far as like a long trail, oh man, Berg Lake is up there now. Like Berg Lake is hard to beat for the miles, the elevation gain you have to do, and then the payoff at the end. This one's going to be hard to beat for sure.
Well, I'm really grateful that you invited me on this because it's been pretty spectacular for me as well. Okay, so we backpacked the Enchantments together back in 2024, and I've actually seen your backpacking gear evolve over the last 2 years. You've become quite the ultralight backpacker. If you had advice for anyone getting into backpacking, what would it be?
You have. I think you saw me at like 30-pound base weight, and I think I cracked under 20 this year. And for me, I think taking it slow and just going in budget-wise to make sure that I enjoy backpacking instead of buying ultralight gear right off the bat was a huge thing. Because I did enjoy it, but like there are certain moments where like after the Enchantments, it's like, oh man, that pack was heavy. What can I do to reduce it? And sometimes, it's just packing your fears. So making sure that you leave some of those things that you never touch outside of your gear list. But then it's like, okay, do I really need this super comfy, super padded sleeping pad that weighs, 3-4 pounds? Or can I get away with like a 1-pound pad? So I think my biggest advice is take it slow, borrow, or buy used, and make sure that you like it. And then if you do enjoy it, start upgrading as you go and see like, okay, this isn't a deal breaker, but, a quilt for me made a world of a difference compared to a sleeping bag. And I think for me, that was the biggest upgrade in my gear that really made things enjoyable.
Is there a guest that maybe you've had on the show that gave you advice for ultralight gear, or is this just something you researched?
There's a few guests actually that recommended quilts over sleeping bags. And I think for me, that was the biggest thing is I like to toss and turn. And in a mummy bag, it's so constrictive. So for me, now upgrading to the Zen Bivy sleep system, I feel like I'm sleeping at home now. And it's made a huge difference. So all the guests that, just kept saying, no, you got to try a quilt. You got to try a quilt is huge. But I do want to say one of the biggest pieces of advice, and I think you guys have experienced this on this trail with me. One guest really made a point of dressing up while he's hiking. Because I think for a lot of us, it's easy to get into the greens, the browns, the blacks. And after speaking with him and seeing how he dresses on the trail, it's yeah, I should add a little bit of color to my wardrobe. And I started buying these Columbia Hawaiian shirts. And I swear, I think on the Berg Lake Trail, it's been at least half a dozen people have complimented this shirt. I just love bringing a little bit of color. And for hiking in groups, it's easy to tell me from other hikers when I'm wearing a brightly colored Hawaiian shirt.
I think that's really awesome because I think for most hikers and backpackers, we're all searching for color and tired of the drab black clothes, the, basic clothes that are put out by many of the companies. So this is for all the companies out there. Give us more color. We want more color in our shoes. We want more color in our shirts. We want more color. And we ended up matching on the trail, which was great because I brought orange. Ivan's got an orange shirt on. He's also got yellow and green. And it was fun. You know what? Why not bring some fun to the trail? I love that. Okay, well, one thing I really want to talk to you about, because I'm really interested in this too, is that you recently attempted a Mount Adams summit and you made the decision, which is so hard. I've had to turn around for something before too. And it's just a hard thing to do because you take all this time planning and you made the decision to turn around due to inclement weather. Can you tell your listeners more about that trip and maybe what you learned from it?
I think I shared a post recently about it, and to kind of expand on that post. So we were going to do a 2-day summit attempt of Mount Adams in June, and we were keeping a close eye on the forecast. And 2 weeks out, it was going to be miserable, windy, cold. I think it was expected to be 18 degrees at lunch counter. And then things slowly started turning for the good, but a little too good. So then we ended up going up there during a heat wave. We got there at 2:00, and by then it was already in the 80s. And because of trail reports, people saying that there wasn't any water up there, you would have to, melt snow in order to get water at lunch counter. We all decided to pack at least 3 to 4 liters of water, which added to our pack weight. And I was the lightest at 33 pounds, and 7 pounds of it was just water. We had somebody who had 50 pounds, and things were decent on the ascent to lunch counter. The snow was still firm, but once we started getting to the last 2 miles, it was starting to get really slushy. And it just took a long time because it was hot. So we were stopping, making sure we got plenty of water. And then it was just slow going on that mushy, slushy snow. And then that night at lunch counter, which is close to 10,000 feet, the low was 48 degrees, which is unheard of for, early June. And that didn't allow the snow to firm up. So I got woken up around 3:30 by the first couple groups going up Piker's Peak, which is the fall summit of Mount Adams. I was kind of just seeing them, how they were reacting to the snow, and it was slow going. By the time the rest of my group woke up around 5, those first 5 groups were maybe a third of the way up. So it was already slow going. And then we went to go get water, kind of assess the situation, but you could easily tell that the snow was not firm at all. It was really slushy. And we kind of decided to give it another hour, see what people thought. And within that hour, out of the 5 that went up at 3:30, 3 had turned around. And were already making their descent. So we were kind of worried about that. And then we kind of just kept hearing, the conditions weren't great. Crampons weren't really helping with that type of snow. And, a multitude of reasons for others. But for me, it was just I had the universal crampons, which did provide what I needed on the first day. But on the second day, I didn't feel comfortable. And I think the rest of the group didn't feel comfortable with the conditions because we had a self-arrest once on the climb up. For those that know Mount Adams, there's a section before lunch counter, like 2 miles out, where you have to kind of use a snow ladder to get to the ridge line, and it was kind of slushy. But we ultimately decided as a group, like, these aren't the best conditions. Even at the summit, I think with wind chill, it was still only going to be 33 degrees, which was warm. So we decided to head down, and on the descent, you could quickly tell that things were deteriorating with the snowpack. Like, it was just like walking on mashed potatoes. And then once we got to that ridge line, maybe a mile before we hit the trail, I fell through a snow trap with my right leg. And I was just dangling. I was expecting just to fall completely through. And luckily it didn't. So I got up, got on some dirt. Then I was like, that was scary. Don't want that to happen again. And later did I find out that one of our other members, who was maybe like half a mile behind me, he completely fell through, but luckily his drop was only like 3 to 4 feet. So after that experience, I was like, I don't want to be on this ridgeline anymore. I'm just going to glissade the rest of the way. And I took off my crampons and I'm like, I'm going for it. Glissaded down. It was fine. Wasn't scary, but it was the better call than trying to go through that step ladder. And once we got out, we were all extremely thankful to being off that snow. But for me, the biggest lesson was just like, if the conditions aren't right, if it's going to be more of a hazard to be up there, it's probably not the best time to do it. And I'm thankful that we turned around, and I think that's something that I will carry in future Mount Adams attempts if I do it again, or any other mountaineering. But I think it definitely taught me a lesson, and something that I'll remember for the rest of my life.
That's a crazy story. Do you think that you'll want to make another attempt on Mount Adams? Is it something that you do further towards the winter time, or how does that work?
Yeah, I would love to do another attempt, but yeah, like maybe a month ahead of schedule. Like a lot of us on the West Coast, we didn't really have much of a snowpack. So I think that played into it. I think most Junes in previous years, it was easily accomplished, but definitely choosing a weather window where it's not as hot. Because even though you think it's going to be warm, maybe that's not what you need. You want temperatures to get dropped below freezing to firm up that snow.
That's such a great story. I honestly did not know you did that. So I'm totally impressed that you made an attempt for that. And I hope you get your summit someday. Switching gears a little bit, if you had unlimited time and resources, what is one place you would wish to visit? Maybe it's a place that you've seen before. Maybe I know you spent a lot of time in Hawaii, so I'm curious what that place might be for you.
If there's anywhere to live, Hawaii still very much feels like home to me. But like when I do move back, I want it to be a permanent thing. I don't want to be renting or anything like that. I want to make it a permanent thing. But last year I went to New Zealand, and because a lot of the trails that I was going to do and a lot of the activities were on the South Island, that was my primary focus. But I did spend 2 days on the North Island, one being Hobbiton, and then decided to go down to the South Island and check off a bunch of trails and activities. And I feel like I only scratched the surface. I could easily spend a month on each island and probably not see everything I want to see. So if I had unlimited resources and time, I think New Zealand, both islands.
That sounds amazing. I've never been in New Zealand, but you make it very enticing. Well, we are sitting here on our third night of the Berg Lake Trail that's up in British Columbia. We're done with our massive ascents that we've had. And we are down at Kinney Lake for our last night. The sun is trying to shine through some clouds. It's quite beautiful. I want to ask you, on this trail, what's one piece of gear that you wish you had brought, and maybe one that you wish you had left behind?
This is primarily because you guys made it seem so comfortable, is the backpacking chair. And I have backpacking chairs, but I was like, there's going to be shelters. There's going to be spaces for me to sit. But like, if you want to go down to the lake, you'd have to battle for space on some of those benches that are there, where it'd just be easier to pop up your backpacking chair and then just plop it wherever you want. So I think for sure that one. And one that I would leave at home. Ooh, that's a good one. I love my quilt, but I probably should have brought my 32-degree quilt. I have a 10-degree quilt that I brought, and it's been too hot, which is good, but it's been too hot. So I think I would have swapped it out for my 32-degree quilt.
That makes sense. We actually were expecting really bad weather. It was supposed to rain every day. We were expecting 30-degree temperatures at night and 50 in the day. And last night it was like 51 degrees. So we were all kind of warm last night. Let's talk a little bit more about the Berg Lake Trail. Like, how did you find out about this? This was not even on my radar. So I've never even heard of it, I literally drove 20 hours over 2.5 days to come to the airport and pick Ivan and Jenna up from Calgary Airport. We drove another 6.5 hours to get to here to the trailhead. And I'm just curious how you found out about this trail. Was it a listener? Was it just something you researched? Talk to me more about that.
Yeah, so it was one of those things that the algorithm fed me, which I'm kind of thankful for. But I came to Canada to Banff last year for Larch Madness. And as you start researching, Banff, you start getting fed all these trails, and then just randomly the Berg Lake showed up as places to visit if you're going to be visiting Banff. And then I saw Mount Robson and Berg Lake, and I'm like, where is that? Like, I want to go to that. And then, with research, you're like, oh, that's not close to Banff. That's a distance away. So then I kept looking at it and then found out that it had been closed for like 4 years because of a massive flood that took out a big part of the trail, which we ended up seeing like sections of where the trail used to be. And it just reopened last year for the first time. So once I found that out, I was like, okay, I want to do this. Like, I even put it on my vision board for the outdoors for 2026 as like, this is going to be one of them. Funny story, when I was in Larch Valley, I came across some future guests on the trail and we exchanged our information. And while I was interviewing her, she had already gotten her permits for Berg Lake because the previous year they released the permits at a different time because they weren't sure if the trail was going to open up on time. And then this year they released them on December 2nd. So literally as I'm interviewing her and she's like, oh yeah, I got my permits. And I'm like, how'd you get your permits? And she's like, oh, they got released on December 2nd. And I was like, I thought they were going to get released in April. Oh no, that was just last year. And I was just like, oh. So then I was like, instantly after we finished the interview, I went on, BC Parks and all the permits were gone. And I was just like, oh man. And it wasn't until Outdoor Status sent me an email saying, we're going to be putting the Berg Lake on our website if you want to track cancellations. And I was like, okay, I'm doing it. And I think in February, I picked up Whitehorn. And then throughout the spring, I just kept picking up other canceled permits. And we ended up getting 2 days at Whitehorn, and then our last day at Kinney Lake. And then literally, a week before our trip, somebody dropped Berg Lake as their campsite. So then we bumped our second day to Berg Lake rather than staying at Whitehorn, which was just, I love the fact that we were able to do that. But yeah, it was literally the algorithm fed it to me. And once I saw that mountain and that lake, I was like, I want to go there. I need to go there. Let's make it happen.
It was quite stunning last night. We got in, we've had beautiful weather the entire time. It was sunny. The lake was as blue as the lake could be. And while we were there, you created something for dinner that we were all a little mind blown of. And I think you should tell your listeners about your now famous Berg Ramen Bomb. Tell us what's in it, how you make it, and all about it, because you might want to put this on your backpacking food list for your next trip.
So I made a ramen bomb, and I picked this up from, I think, other PCT hikers that just wanted a quick, easy meal. And it's literally instant ramen, instant potatoes, and some sort of protein. And I think for a lot of us that backpack, finding a meal that you can eat on a regular basis is tough. There's moments where I'm like, oh, this is going to be good on trail. And then you get there and you're like, I don't want to eat this. And for me, it was like, it's hard to pass up mashed potatoes when you're hungry. So, okay, let me check that off. And then ramen, I like ramen. So then I elevated it a little bit. I went with a little bit fancier instant ramen, the Shin Gold. And then I think I'm blanking on the name, but they now have protein instant mashed potatoes. And then I added that to the list. And then my protein of choice is chicken packets, but the Southwest flavor. And that's just a perfect combo, but you can add any protein. You can add tuna. I like Spam if you can crisp it up instead of just straight out of the pouch. But yeah, you literally cook your ramen for couple minutes, toss in your instant mashed potatoes, knead it, and then put in your protein, and then you're all set.
It looked amazing. We actually were drooling while we were eating our terrible freeze-dried meals last night. Okay, we are on to this or that questions. Are you ready? These are the new ones for season 15. Ivan is almost about to record his 200th episode, which is insane to me. You've done this in 4 years. It's pretty wild. Okay, first question. Are you an itinerary planner or a spontaneous trailhead decision maker?
I think you guys got to witness this firsthand. I'm very much a spreadsheet planner. So I created a spreadsheet for this trip. So I love to do research, and then I love to break it down. Just for me personally, I like to know what I'm getting into. Although I got to be honest, these rolling hills on the Berg Lake Trail, when they say relatively flat, I don't know what relative flatness they're talking about, because on the Berg Lake Trail map, it gives you the different elevations each campground is at. So I just figured like, okay, Berg Lake's at 53, Whitehorn's at like 39. That's the elevation that we're going to do. But when you add hills to it, it like adds more and more. I think we ended up doing over 2,000 when it should have been like 1,800, 1,700. So sometimes the planning can lead me astray, but I'm very much a logistical planner when it comes to trips.
Well, to be fair, it did say on All Trails that it was relatively flat sections, which were really 800 gain and like 300 loss. Not relatively flat, but okay. Next question. Permit system, or are you a first come, first serve person?
After realizing I missed the permit system for Berg Lake, I'm very much a permit system when it works, but as a lot of us know, when it comes to lotteries, it's just the luck of the draw. But I've heard a lot of people, when it comes to the enchantments or any other ones, especially in California, sometimes first come, first serve. If you're there at the ranger station when they do walk-ups, that might be your best shot than trying to deal with lotteries. But for this upcoming year, I'd love to do Berg Lake again, because we only got to scratch the surface of it for this trip. I'm going to be online on, whenever they release the permits for 2027 and be sure I can map it out.
Next question. If you had to choose a talus field or dense brush, and this one hurts a little today, but I'm going to pass this.
Oh man, that is tough. Like, I think of dense brush, and especially like in Washington, ticks and stuff like that. But those talus fields today were not fun on the feet. I even swapped out new socks today thinking that was going to help. But, as we were leaving Berg Lake, there's a talus field, which wasn't bad. It was beautiful. The views were really great. But then it was just continued to be rocky. And then right before Whitehorn, it got rocky again. And then there's just like sections that were like, I'm going to be rocky right now instead of dirt. But I think I'd still go talus over dense brush.
Okay, trail report writer, or are you a trail report reader?
I should be a trail review inspector, because I've been fooled multiple times now. For Mount Adams, there were trail reports of people doing it in trail runners and micro spikes, that there wasn't any snow until lunch counter. We encountered snow at 2.5 miles in, and it did not let up. And then for this one, I would say this trail, if anybody is interested in backpacking and you want to make sure that they enjoy themselves, this trail is it. But it does make you work for it. And, relatively flat for some people is interesting when they write that. So I'm a trail reader. I'm starting to become a reporter too, just because like today after this trail, I'm going to be like, you got to deal with those hills. It's not relatively flat.
So true. They were beasts. We ended up doing like 600 more gain, I think, both days than we were really expecting. Okay, the last one is one of my favorite questions that Ivan has for season 15. Out of all of your hiking experiences, if you could only keep one, would you keep the trail that made you or the trail that broke you?
So I think it's going to be the trail that broke me. And this happened in New Zealand. I had booked a trip to go onto Milford Sound, and there was a trail called, I'm blanking on the name, but it took you to a beautiful alpine lake with a glacier, and it was maybe 3.6 miles round trip, only 1,800 feet of gain, and I was like, oh, I've done this mileage and elevation at home. This is no problem. I'll do it after my Milford Sound trip, knock it out, and then go down the road. Well, it had rained the night before pretty heavily, and there was just rocks all over the place. I made it up to the lake in about an hour. It took me close to 2 hours to come down because then everything was just so slick. It's the only time where I'm like, am I going to hit SOS? Because there's moments where even with my poles, they would slip or my shoe would slip. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to snap something. Like I'm going to break a leg. So then I just had to go extremely slow in order to make it down safely. And maybe the last half mile of the trail is alongside a river that has a nice boardwalk. As soon as I got there, I let a huge sigh and I was like, oh, thank goodness this is over. But it definitely made me realize that, you know, when it comes to elevation gain and mileage, it varies on trail and weather conditions can play a huge role in it. And I think it really humbled me. And yeah, that one will forever be ingrained. And I think it helped us, or it helped me, I will say, today with the rain, just taking it slow. I slipped once, but there was never a moment where I was like, oh, this is going to be precarious.
Well, at least you had two people with you too, just in case you weren't by yourself. Well, that's everything for this episode from your very amateur takeover hosts, Tami and Ivan. Thank you so much for having me here on this trip. Like, I'm so honored that you invited me to come to the Berg Lake Trail. When you said it, I said yes immediately, and I wasn't turning back, no matter what the mileage was. But thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me take over your podcast for the day.
Oh, it's been awesome having you on trail, Tami. I really enjoyed my experience with you on the Enchantments in Kolchak, and I've really enjoyed my experience with you on Berg Lake Trail along with Jenna. You know, for me, each of my backpacking trips, there was a point on the trip where I'm like, I want this to be over. Last year on the Enchantments, the last 9 miles, I was like, I just want to get home. And this is the first trail where I'm like, yes, it was hard days, but like I have thoroughly enjoyed myself with my company, with the views. Like this is the first one where I'm like, I enjoy backpacking. So thank you and Jenna for making this an unbelievable experience and being willing to come up here because it was a journey for Tami, for Jenna, and me to make it up to Berg Lake. So thank you. Before we get into your questions, I just want to take a second to give a big thank you. First, Tami, thank you for stepping into the host chair for this one and for being out here with me on the Berg Lake Trail in the first place. A special thanks to Jenna, our third companion on this trip. Jenna hiked every mile with us and was the one behind the camera, grabbing all the behind-the-scene moments while Tami and I were recording. I have to tell you a quick story about these two because it sums up our trip perfectly. Every campground we stayed at on this trail, Whitehorn, Berg Lake, and Kinney Lake, has covered shelters, a spot where backpackers can sit, cook, and just talk. For 3 days straight, the three of us kept half joking that we should throw some sort of talent show or show and tell at one of these shelters. On our last night at Kinney Lake, Tami and Jenna actually made it happen. They went around camp and invited everyone to join us at the shelter for a show and tell. Bring your favorite piece of gear and the piece of gear you wish you left at home. Over a dozen campers showed up, grandkids, grandparents, everyone in between, and the piece of gear that stole the show, a pair of arch-supported flip-flops called Archies. That's backpacking with Tami and Jenna. They just show up. They make things happen. All right, let's get into your questions. So the first one was submitted by Season 15, Episode 1 guest Meg. What was the one thing you have learned or surprised you from all the interviews you've done? And I think the one thing that really has surprised me from doing all these interviews is the feedback that I get from guests that they receive from friends and family. Some of the guests, their friends and family just didn't know how important the outdoors was to them. Hearing them speak on the podcast and hearing them, express how much it means to them to be outside in the outdoors, on trail, backpacking, or day hiking really surprised a lot of friends and family, and I think in a positive way. And I think from hearing their episode, it made them realize how important this was to them and maybe influenced them to hit the trails with that guest. So I think that's what surprised me the most from doing all these episodes. The next question was submitted by Tracy, a YVT member. She wanted to know about any wildlife encounters on trail. And I was thinking about this one. Because I've backpacked with Tracy on the Enchantments last year, it kind of came to mind that specifically as we're about to start our climb up Asgard Pass, If folks know where the enchantments are in Washington State, everyone, I think, has a good idea of Kolchak Lake. But in order to get into the core zone, you have to go up this really steep, scramble called Asgard Pass. And it's less than a mile, but over 2,000 feet of gain. And the first time I pulled a permit for Kolchak, Tami actually came out and joined me. That was our first backpacking experience, but we had to come down Asgard Pass. And as I got done with the steep section, you get to like this little forested area right above Kolchak with tiny little trees, a few streams. And I come across a goat literally in the middle of the trail, and they're not moving. And I just wait, and I ended up waiting like for 10 minutes for this goat to finally move. And this is after, coming down Asgard Pass in the blazing sun. I just wanted to get to camp, take off my shoes, jump in the lake. I just had to wait for this dang goat to move. And finally, some other hikers were coming from the opposite direction, and that alerted it and made it get off trail. I bring that up because last year, when we were going to be hiking up Asgard Pass, I was actually hiking up with Jordan. And wouldn't you know, literally at that same intersection, a mama goat and her kid are across the trail. But lo and behold, here comes another adult goat, and they end up getting into a tussle. And me and Jordan are just like, should we backtrack a little? Like, what's going to happen? But they ultimately got in a tussle further into the trees, cleared the trail, and then continued on their way. They kind of stopped fighting after they got off the trail and into the brush. But yeah, I think that's just been an interesting wildlife encounter, literally in the same spot with goats that don't want to leave the trail or fighting on the trail. And then another question was, most epic backpacking trip or hike? Still processing the Berg Lake Trail and all the experiences, but I have been telling people that it's going to be hard to beat this trail in North America. Just mile per mile, what this trail delivers is very hard to beat. For those that have been to the Canadian Rockies or have seen pictures of the Canadian Rockies and that glacial blue lake color, I mean, that's at the trailhead on the Robson River. Like, you have the Robson River for 4 miles with that glacial blue water roaring right next to you. And then you reach Kinney Lake, which has that beautiful glacial color as well. Whitehorn in the middle of the Valley of 1,000 Falls was just beautiful. I would say the most challenging part was climbing from Whitehorn to Berg Lake, which was, I think, maybe 2,000 feet of gain, if I can remember correctly. Just has waterfalls and waterfalls. Like, the Valley of 1,000 Falls lives up to it. And then as you near the crest of the climb, you're greeted with Emperor Falls. And then you get to Berg Lake and you see Mount Robson from a completely different angle. And you have to rock skip through all these little creeks that are coming down from the mountains and the glaciers. And then you see Berg Lake. And that color is just so distinct. And especially with Mount Robson hanging over it and seeing, the multiple glaciers on Mount Robson, one literally right next to the lake, it is just stunning. Another submitted question was, how do I pick guests? Is there any type of story that I'm chasing or wanting to tell? And in all honesty, it varies from season to season. There's some seasons where we get a lot of outreach from individuals, so the guests themselves. And then over the last 2 years, we've had a lot of PR agencies reach out and pitch their guests to us. We always try to look for the hiking and backpacking angle or mountaineering, outdoorsy angle. We keep a list of guests that we would love to have on the podcast, and we do outreach via Instagram or email and invite them to be on. It kind of varies from season to season. Some seasons are primarily guests that we've done outreach. Other seasons, it's 75% people have reached out to us and 25% are guests that we've reached out to. So it just varies, but I believe everyone has a story, whether they have 100,000 followers or just starting off on their social media journey. I think we can learn from everybody's experiences. Couple questions that were submitted on the guest form. The first one being, how has your relationship with hiking changed since starting the podcast? And I think the biggest thing for me was becoming a backpacker. I was a day hiker primarily when I started the podcast 4 years ago. I've done some camping and some overnight trips, but not necessarily backpacking trips. It was more like car camping. But hearing guests tell about their backpacking stories and a lot of the thru hikers that have been on the show suggesting that I should give it a try really pushed me to give backpacking a try. And I think that's been the biggest change, is wanting to do longer and longer backpacking trips. Not necessarily at the thru hiker phase, but I'm getting close. I would love to do a longer hike. The Berg Lake Trail was the longest backpacking trip I've done, so 4 days, 3 nights. And I feel like there I could have done easily a whole week. So who knows? The last one from the online guest forum was, what was one gear item that you regret buying and one that you never leave home without? I think a lot of people, especially those that are just starting off with backpacking, when they get their gear list, you see the trowel, and when you search for a trowel, unless you're searching for ultralight, you'll tend to come across this plastic orange trowel. And I have not used it. It's not super heavy, but it's way heavier than my ultralight trowel. And just the horror stories that I've heard of folks that use it, that it breaks, it snaps. I bought it because it was the cheapest one. Ultimately never used it. Ended up getting an ultralight one from Garage Grown Gear. But I would say that's the one piece of gear that I regret buying, because I never used it, never touched it, and then just sits in my gear closet. Now, the one piece of gear that I'll never leave home without, I think right now it's my Zen bivy. It's really made a big difference in my sleep. As somebody who's a side sleeper that moves around, having that flexibility to move around and not necessarily have drafts coming in and zapping your heat has been really great. And the fact that it's super light keeps me warm, I think it's going to be part of my sleep system for a very long time. I also got a few requests to do the this or that questions. So I'm going to be doing the ones that me and Tami didn't do while on trail. So the first one is, do I track the hike or do I turn off tracking? For me, I love the stats. I love writing trail reports lately. So I definitely track the hike, and I always like to compare the stats with other hikers. My Pixel Watch will say something, Alltrails will say something else, and then folks that have an Apple Watch, a Garmin, we're all different. And then the next one is home range or destination travel. 50-50. I really love exploring and showing our side of the Cascades, both in Chinook Pass, White Pass, the Goat Rocks. I'm really proud of our trails in my home range, but I will say the destination travel has been a good one over the last couple of years. So that one I'm torn. I would say the majority of the time it's home range, but I'll tend to do 1 to 2 big destination trips each year. Next one is first mile of the hike or last mile of the hike. And this one's a tough one. There's been some hikes this summer where I really struggle on that first mile to get my trail legs going. It makes me second guess, I've been working out, I've been hiking regularly, I've been hitting the Stairmaster like crazy, but some of the ascents, it's just like, geez, I'm feeling it. So sometimes the first mile of the hike I'm dreading, but then there's been times where that last mile of the hike just keeps going and going and going. But I will say, I think the first mile of the hike I'll go with for now. Next question is trail runners or hiking boots. Right now, I'm exclusively trail runners. So I got the Ultra Wild Experience 3 Plus. I've really enjoyed them. They've been great. Haven't had any issues with them, especially with my Injinji toe socks. For the first time ever on a backpacking trip, I didn't have any blisters. So I think the combination of the trail runners and the toe socks have been really good. Yeah, I'm exclusively trail runners. Right now I'm ultras, but I'm definitely looking at topos as well. Desert heat or alpine cold? Oh, this is tough. I think I prefer alpine cold, just because I know I can keep myself warm, depending on the temperatures, where with desert heat, I am just going through my water supply. And even if it's a dry heat, I think it just zaps me. So for me, it's alpine cold. And then spring wildflowers or fall colors. We didn't have the best wildflower season this year because it's been so dry. It was still great to see the wildflowers out and about, and especially up in the mountains. They've been doing really, really well here in Washington, but I'm kind of looking forward to Larch Madness this year. I found a new hike in my home range that has the potential to have some great larch groves. So I'm really looking forward to fall. So for this one, I'm saying fall colors. Type 1 or type 2 fun. In all honesty, it's type 2 fun. Most trails that I've done this year have made me work for it. There's been moments where I second guess myself. So for now, type 2 fun. And then the last one is backpacking or day hike. Before the Berg Lake Trail, I would have said day hike 99 out of 100 times. But if I can have similar backpacking trips like the Berg Lake Trail, I think I would have to say backpacking. So post Berg Lake, saying backpacking for now. And that was it for the community Q&A questions. Thank you everyone who submitted their questions. Really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who supported us over the last 4 years. I really appreciate it. I would have never thought that we would be approaching 200 episodes. It's been an amazing experience. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for supporting the podcast, supporting the guest. Thank you to the guests for coming on. It's been incredible. Yeah, it's been great to see the community growth, both on and off the trail, and just the positive influence a lot of not just the guests, but the community has had on me. And that brings us to the end of this episode alongside Tami. We extend a heartfelt thanks to her for turning the tables and hosting this one. Be sure to follow her on Instagram at Tami on the Trail. And for more, be sure to check out the episode show notes. New episodes will drop every Monday throughout the summer hiking season, with the occasional Friday bonus episodes along the way. To make sure you never miss a moment of these inspiring trail stories, hit that follow or subscribe button. Your support truly keeps this community moving forward, one episode at a time. Don't forget to connect with us on Instagram at Hikes and Mics. That's where you'll find behind-the-scenes episode visuals, my own summer hiking adventures, and plenty more to keep that high country stoke alive while the long days last. As we wrap up today's journey, remember, the passes are open, the peaks are calling, and the whole season is stretched out ahead of us like a trail with no end in sight. So chase those big summer miles, soak in every hour of daylight, and keep climbing toward whatever's waiting above the next ridge. Until next time, my fellow hikers, happy hiking. This episode's music was created by Ketsa. Follow along with him on Instagram at Ketsa Music. This episode is brought to you by Ursa Minor Outfitters. Folks, I'm absolutely in love with my loon mug. It's handmade. It's an absolute piece of art. Whether it's at the office or at the house, people keep asking to check it out. If you're not a loon fan, they also have other beautiful mugs for wildlife fans of moose, bears, and eagles. They specialize in products highlighting the outdoors and local pride through quality design by local artists. They've even started expanding into items beyond mugs, like apparel, dog accessories, and soon candles and more. They also try to partner and highlight other small businesses, and in some cases, forego profits in lieu of charitable giving to help their community, such as the dog rescue. So check them out, UrsaMinorOutfitters.com, and enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. And for our four-legged hiking partners, they also have a portable silicone dog bowl and also a sweet over-the-collar dog bandana. Go check them out, UrsaMinorOutfitters.com, and don't forget to enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order.